At Wells Fargo, the quest to increase diversity leads to fake job interviews. Black and female candidates are sometimes interviewed after the recipient of a job is identified, current and former employees say. And you are just now figuring this shit out? Are you fucking kidding me? I remember this over a decade ago from my experience within the big corporate world. Let me tell you a common occurrence. The department wants to open up a new job. Like they basically want to promote someone from within, and they already are going to give that job to that person. There's no questions about that. It's only being created to promote that person. But they are legally required to list the job publicly for a certain amount of time first and do interviews and all that other shit. So they already know who they're going to give the job to, but they're not legally allowed to just give them the job. They have to open it up publicly. So for about a month, the job was listed publicly, and they did a few interviews a day. So they basically wasted about 100 people's time interviewing for a job they had no fucking chance of getting to begin with, all because of bullshit government laws and regulations that force them to make that job listing public, even though they know damn well who they're going to give the job to. I would rather they just give the job to that person to begin with than fucking pretend like these other people have a chance, okay? How many of you guys have been on the interview circuit and you've gone months and months without hearing back? I will say maybe half the time it's not because of you. It's not because of you did anything wrong. It's not because someone else they interviewed was better for the job. It's because those jobs were never actually open to fucking begin with. Like half the jobs you interview for, they probably already had somebody in mind that they were going to give the job to, but they have to legally, to get the government off their ass, list it publicly and actually pretend like they're seriously considering other people. They're wasting your fucking time playing games with the government. So this has been a common problem for decades. We've known about this for decades. But the brainlets at the New York Lies, the biggest, most trusted name in journalism, only now catch on to this when it's starting to affect the marginalized groups that are the only people they care about. Joe Bruno, a former executive in the wealth management division of Wells Fargo, has long been troubled by the way his unit handled certain job interviews. For many open positions, employees would interview a diverse candidate, the bank's term for a whammons or POC, in keeping with the bank's years-long informal policy. But Mr. Bruno noticed that often the so-called diverse candidate would be interviewed for a job that had already been promised to someone else. Very common. It's been happening for decades, but nobody cared until whammons most affected, huh? He complained to his bosses and they dismissed his claims. Well, no shit. They're literally only interviewing those people to appease the government. That's it. You want to stop these companies wasting these people's time? Get the government out of it. Last August, Mr. Bruno, 58, was fired. In an interview, he said Wells Fargo retaliated against him for telling his superiors that the fake interviews are inappropriate, morally wrong, and ethically wrong. Yeah, it's no surprise he got fired. Wells Fargo said Mr. Bruno was dismissed for retaliating against a fellow employee. Really? What's their story? Mr. Bruno is one of 7 current and former Wells Fargo employees who said they were instructed by their direct bosses or human resource managers in the bank's wealth management unit to interview diverse candidates, even though the decision had already been made to give the job to another candidate. 5 others said they were aware of the practice or helped to arrange it. This is literally all a game of cover your ass. That's it. That's all it's ever been. That's all it ever will be. And there's nothing you can do to change it either. The best option would be to just stop playing these games and stop wasting people's time. But how are you going to virtue signal if we did that? So the interviews, they said, seem to be more about helping Wells Fargo record its diversity efforts on paper. That is literally all it is. Yes, that you finally caught on, huh? Partly in anticipation of possible regulatory audits, rather than hiring more whammons or people of color. All but three spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were afraid of losing their jobs at Wells Fargo or their new employers. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, this is something you should know. New employers don't look kindly on you talking shit about your past employers because they just assume you're going to do the same thing to them when you move on. In an emailed statement, Rachel Burton, a Wells Fargo spokeswoman, said the bank expected all employees to follow its hiring policies and guidelines, which are communicated across the firm. To the extent that the individual employees are engaging in the behavior as described by the New York Lies, we do not tolerate it. Ms. Burton said she was aware of informal directives about hiring diverse candidates as long as they're inside the bank, but those rules were from an earlier era that the bank's current leaders had nothing to do with. Well, why didn't you change it? So most of Wells Fargo's top management turned over in the current year -2 after a scandal involving the creation of fraudulent accounts damaged the bank's reputation, led to more than $4.5 billion in fines. That's it, $4.5 billion? That's pocket change for them. It should have been like $1 trillion or something. They would have felt that one. That's for damn sure. The internal confusion around Wells Fargo's diversity policies highlights how even the noblest goals can end up getting warped as they make their way from idea to practice, ultimately hurting the very people they were meant to help. You seriously just now figuring this out too? Isn't this exactly what we warn them about every time, that their good intentions are going to have unintended consequences that actually make things worse? And they never listen. These same morons keep making the same mistakes and they keep getting away with it because no one ever holds them accountable. Now, 2 years ago, in light of the national reckoning on race that followed the overdose of George Kirby, Wells Fargo was among the companies that pledged to increase diversity. And I'm actually glad that they're being held to the standard now, like they're being told to put their money where their fucking mouth is. In June of currently -2, memo to employees, Charles Scharf, Scharf, not Shart, just one letter off, who became chief executive of Wells Fargo a year before, pledged to consider a wide array of candidates for jobs at the bank, but added the bank's struggle to find qualified black candidates. He later apologized for the comment when the memo became public in September. Yeah, that's right. He's like, we would hire more of them if they weren't so dumb. Oh, shit. Well, what do you mean that was insensitive? So, following Shart's directive, Wells Fargo adopted a formal policy requiring that diverse slate of candidates would have to be interviewed for all job openings, pay more than $100,000 a year. Should be for all of them. Why not? That August, Wells Fargo paid nearly $8 million to settle a claim by the Department of Labor they had discriminated against more than 30,000 black job applicants for positions in banking, sales, and support roles. This is sad about America right there. No matter what you do, someone's going to sue you for it. The Wells Fargo has already been trying to increase diversity. In current year -9. A group of black financial advisors at Wells Fargo sued the bank for racial discrimination, saying that they were corralled into poor neighborhoods and kept away from opportunities to win new clients or partner with white financial advisors. Now, that does sound like segregation to me. If that's true. Yeah, the bank settled the case in current year -5. Wells Fargo paid nearly $36 million to about 320 members of the class action lawsuit and pledged to take actions designed to enhance opportunities for employment, earnings, and advancement of African American financial advisor trainees. Now, what have you actually done? So as the lawsuit progressed, Wells Fargo began requiring that at least one Whammons or POC needed to be interviewed for each job open. See, so that's why they do it. Even after they decide who's going to get the job, they literally have to fill a quota. It's like, oh shit, we didn't fill the quota yet. Whatever. Let's just do one more interview. But she added the policy was not written down and was only for certain senior positions. The policy was similar in the National Football League's Rooney Rule, named after Dan Rooney, a former owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The rule was devised after researchers demonstrated to league officials that black coaches were being shut out of job opportunities. It required the league to interview at least one non-white candidate for senior positions like head coach and general manager. Earlier this year, the NFL was sued by black coaches who claimed they were subject to sham interviews. Yeah, exactly. And I actually love this. They keep bending over to this social justice garbage, and it's never enough. Like they keep getting fucked. I love it. They get what they deserve. Well-intentioned people create these initiatives, but when they hit the ground, the energy was devoted not to implementing them, but finding a way to get around them, said Linda Friedman, the lawyer for the black financial advisors involved in the current year -5 Wells Fargo settlement. Yeah, this is why we actually had a saying back when I was in college. And this saying was to disparage the college, funny enough. The difference between theory and practice is a lot smaller in theory than it is in practice. I'll let you guys think on that one, but I'm sure you all get it. But there's deeper layers there if you want to dig. Mr. Bruno joined Wells Fargo in current year -22 and worked his way up to market leader for Wells Fargo Advisors in Jacksonville, Florida. He oversaw 14 branches of the bank's wealth management operation. He saw himself as a champion of diversity. I think there was a photo of him up above. Yup, white guy. I think this is justice too. Whenever some white guy is a champion of diversity and he ends up losing his job to make the company more diverse, you get what you fucking deserve. Now, Mr. Bruno was mainly responsible for filling two categories of jobs: financial advisors and financial consultants who work alongside the advisors. He said that he was often told to conduct interviews with black candidates for financial consultant positions, which were lower paying jobs. In most such cases, Wells had no intention of hiring those people because either he or his superiors had already picked someone for the job. Should have been smarter about that. And Mr. Bruno said he eventually refused to conduct the interviews. I got a black person on the other side of the table who has no shot at getting a job, he told his bosses. So let me get this straight. Like, this is why you shouldn't take this guy seriously. He's not a good person. He's just a virtue signaling piece of shit. Because this guy said nothing when this same thing was happening decades ago before it became a race or gender issue. This exact same practice has been done for since the dawn of corporations. I don't need to get into my rant from earlier in this again, but why didn't he care about wasting people's time that had no chance of getting the job back then? Why does he only care now? It's because he's fucking virtue signaling. He's probably trying to jump to a competitor, make himself look good, or he's jumping careers entirely. He's trying to look good for somebody. Yeah, he's got ulterior motives. So Barry Summers, the chief executive of Wells Fargo's wealth and investment management business, said that fake interviews wouldn't have been necessary for the financial consultant positions that Mr. Bruno was hiring for. Their salaries, Mr. Summers said, fell below the $100,000 threshold that required a diverse slate of candidates to be interviewed. There's absolutely no reason why anyone would conduct a fake interview, Mr. Summers said. Rather than tracking the identities of the interviewees, the bank is focused on results, and the numbers are getting better. So you're arguing against diversity then? Because forced diversity doesn't lead to good results. Of the nearly 26,000 people the bank hired in current year, -2, 7% were not white men, said Miss Burton. The last year, 81% of the 30,000 people hired were not white men, she said. She declined to specify how many of those new hires were for jobs above the $100,000 salary threshold. So if you are a white man, they're literally telling you, we don't want you. Now, I can kind of predict what's going to happen in the future because I'm already preparing to go through it myself. Us white men are basically told, yeah, there's too many of you. We don't want you. You need not even apply. We're looking for more diverse people. And where by diverse, they mean non-white, non-male, non-straight. So we have no choice but to make our own. And after we make our own and we become successful, these same people are then going to come to us asking where their share is. And we have to be ready to tell them to go fuck themselves when they do that. Like, hell no, you wanted nothing to do with me. You could go fuck yourself. But 6 current and former Wells Fargo employees, including Mr. Bruno, said the fake interviews were conducted for many types of positions. 3 current employees said they conducted a fake interview or knew of them as recently as this year. In current year -4, Tony Thorpe, a senior manager for Wells Fargo Advisors in Nashville, overseeing 60 advisors. Mr. Thorpe said his boss and the human resource manager overseeing his area both told him that if he found a financial advisor worth recruiting and that advisor wanted to bring a sales assistant along, it was permissible, but the assistant's job was to be posted publicly. Yep, same bullshit I already went into. Yeah, they have these legal requirements, and They just find ways to get around them. So Mr. Thorpe, who was retired from Wells Fargo in current year -3, said he was instructed to reach out to colleges and business associations in the area where he could meet non-white candidates for the assistant job. Mr. Thorpe said he never conducted a fake interview, but was required to document that he had tried to find a diverse pool of candidates, even though he knew exactly who would be getting the job. It's all about covering your ass in the eventual lawsuit. That's it. You have to go tell the story, send an email verifying that what you've done, Mr. Thorpe said. You just had to show you were trying. Ms. Burton said that she couldn't speak to the practices under Wells Fargo's prior management and that the bank keeps records of every job interview. The record keeping is necessary because the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the nation's top banking regulator, conducts periodic audits. Yep, again, it all goes back to the government. While the OCC doesn't impose its own diversity standards for banks, it does check to make sure they're following state and federal laws, including anti-discrimination laws. And this is why it's good to stay small. Like, I'm not going to take government handouts or anything that would require me to follow their bullshit rules. Not going to go public. Yeah, I'm going to miss out on a lot of money, but I think it's going to be a good thing in the long run. So Don Banks, 31, a black wealth manager living in Monroe, Louisiana. Is that Louisiana or L.A.? I think it's since the A isn't capitalized as Louisiana. He was contacted by Wells Fargo twice before he was hired in current year -6 and in current year -5. Human resource representative for the bank told Mr. Bank. What a perfect name for a banker, Mr. Banks. Yeah. That he had advanced past initial interview round for a financial advisor training position, would be getting a call from the manager. Both times, no one called. Mr. Banks had been submitted to fake interviews, according to a former employee who was a manager of the area where Mr. Banks had applied and who participated in hiring process involving Mr. Banks' application. The person who spoke in a position of anonymity because he still works in the industry. Mr. Banks was eventually hired in current year -4 by Wells Fargo in a more junior position. 2 years later, he was laid off during cutbacks during the pandemic. Doesn't sound like a great experience, Mr. Summers, the Wealth Management Chief Executive said. It shouldn't have happened that way. Now, that's a hard lesson that diversity hires are learning right now. When the economy's doing great and money's flowing in and companies got plenty of money to virtue signal with, they're willing to waste it on diversity hires. But as soon as things get tough, the diversity hires are the first ones to go. So enjoy it while it lasts, I guess, because it's not going to last long.